Good evening. Welcome to the May 1st Village Board meeting. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic, one nation, God, hope.
Trustee Herrera.
Present.
Trustee Levin.
Present.
Trustee Quezada.
Present.
Mayor Garrity.
Present.
We'll move in tonight. The first item is mayor's and trustees' announcements.
I believe Trustee Herrera has an announcement.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So tomorrow in Yonkers at Van der Donk Street, I don't know if I'm saying that right, at their park, it's going to be I believe it's a county-wide day of action for the Green Light New York campaign. It's something that the village, our mayor, the police chief, and this board and myself have come out in support of, and it's a pretty important event to really push Albany to see what they can do in the remainder of session to see if we can make that a reality and assure that no matter who you are and where you're from, that you have the ability to receive a license in New York. So that's at 12 noon tomorrow. And also this Saturday, I don't have all the details, so I'll just say the website, Neighbors Link, will be having their annual gala, and it's really the event that really funds their Ossining and Mount Kisco site. And to learn more about tickets and the event and the organization, it's neighborslink.org. And lastly, if you're going to be out celebrating Cinco de Mayo weekend, please be safe. Have a designated driver if you're going to choose to drink. And if you're not, I encourage you to please check out our many Ossining restaurants that are offering delicious food and refreshments for all ages. So thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you. Anybody, any other trustees? Something that you need to make our meeting? Then I'll put on my documentary and discussion series hat for a moment. The May screening is coming up. It is happening Thursday, May 9th. That's next Thursday. It is, as always, free to the public. The program begins at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library. And the film is called Plastic Paradise. And to learn more about it, please visit ossiningdocumentaries.org. Our friends in Green Ossining are organizing the next Repair Cafe. It is happening just 2 days after the documentary and discussion series, and it happens in partnership with the village at the community center on Saturday, May 11th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. At the community center. Bring down anything that is a beloved but broken item, and there are folks, volunteers on hand with the tools and the expertise to help you out with whether it's a sewing machine, just the right glue, wood repair, all sorts of technical support on there in hand, and it's free to the public. It's part of Green Ossining's effort to keep things out of our landfill. It's much better to repair something than have to throw it out and buy a new one. With that, Madam Clerk.
Okay, we'll move into administrative reports. Acting Village Manager Paul Frioli.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'd like to start off by wishing my oldest daughter, Francesca, happy birthday this evening. She's 20. And she's away at school, so I miss her dearly.
Oh.
So since taking on the acting role, I sat in on one staff meeting that we had that was usually something we've regularly done for the past few years with the department heads. And at that meeting, we all brought each other up to speed on what we've been working on. And being that that's not a traditional thing we've done in recent months here, I just thought I'd ask them to send me one or two tidbits from the department. So I'd like to read through some of those now. For the department heads that responded to the email. So I'm going to be reading a little tidbit from everybody's department with the exception of finance.
Wow, really calling them out.
Sorry, Tom. You have plenty on the agenda tonight, and I will let you know that Dale did respond verbally to let us know that we just went through our audit with flying colors, and everything looks really fantastic on the finance books, but Tom can talk about that later when he talks about his budget transfers that fill up the agenda this evening. That said, I'm going to do a mix of the manager's office and DPW in my section of the report before I read the others. Some of the main things that are going on in the manager's office right now is Jamie Hoffman has iCompass up and running. I know that's something that was brought to your attention a couple of months back when it was implemented, and We are just reviewing now some of the other components of that software that we're going to look to implement or not, depending on how much money we want to put towards that. And you're going to see the fruits of that get rolled out over the next few weeks. Secondly, we are starting to talk internally about how we're going to handle this year's DRI grant. We're meeting as a group Friday again internally, inclusive of the manager's office, the mayor, and the planning department, Tracy Corbett, the planner. So that information will be forthcoming, and we're going to try again. We're going to give it a good effort and hopefully have winning results this year. Some of the DPW items that are ongoing right now, we continue to work with the health department to get the final approvals on our filter plant. We still look to commence with construction this year on that project. That's something we're very excited about. One of the more touch and feel projects is the Broadway Bridge. I can say we finally have the concrete saddle poured over the structural rebar that was placed over the last couple of weeks over the original arch, and that it was really a milestone in that project, and hopefully that kicks into gear as it's expected to do so now that that component is done, and we work through that project for completion this summer. And we really hope to have everything buttoned up and finished up by the fall and have a nice ribbon cutting. That would be a nice project to celebrate. It really is going to be a beautiful finished product. Something that's going to be very noticeable this week, probably through the remainder of the month, is the rehabilitation of Underhill Avenue. Heavily used road, so there's a lot of rehabilitation necessary. Includes castings that need to be rebuilt and reset. We're going to be doing milling on a large portion of that road prior to the final paving, so that's going to be a fairly significant inconvenience, but we're going to try to work around it as best as we can by starting on off hours, work around the rush hour, and even work on weekends where applicable. And hopefully the finished product there makes for a much more pleasurable experience, particularly down there, the hill portion of that where it intersects with Walden. It's a much needed project, and we're looking forward to paving that road. And on that note, I touched on it briefly I think last time I spoke with you all about the paving budget, but that's always a much discussed budget with you guys. And I just received a letter today from the DOT confirming that we are going to get the CHIPS money again this year, and this year's amount is going to be the 2019 apportionment of CHIPS is going to be almost 209,000. Cuomo also funded the Pave New York component, which is really an increase to your CHIPS monies of almost 48,000 for the village of Ossining. And basically what that leaves us all told with paving this year, between state aid, unencumbered money from last year, and then the money that you set aside as part of your capital approvals of over $800,000. And a large portion of that money is going to be paving. Some of it's going to be concrete curb and concrete restoration as well. The main portion of which you just saw happen on Church and Main over the last couple of weeks, right next to Market Square. Those are structural slabs that were redone by our annual bid contractor. Getting into some of the other DPW efforts there, two of the grants that we did get last year were two CDBG grants that came out of the DPW office. They were the Recreation Community Center and some of the streetscape and sidewalk work. We were fortunate enough to go down to the CDBG consortium last week and found out that the Westchester County Planning Department is going to be able to distribute over $1 million more than they anticipated. They were originally going to distribute 2.3, and now they're going to distribute up to almost $3.5 million in that CDBG aid in that 3-year cycle. So they were soliciting enhanced proposals on the existing contracts and new contracts. So we're working with some of our partners to help increase their proposals and also working on our own to try to get some more money out of the CDBG program. So that information is forthcoming. But I think we're going to be fairly successful in doing that. Some of the things that Lease is working on in the manager's office, she's already in 2019 secured over $11,000 in film permits, which is a nice thing. You saw some filming going on around the Vets Park area. It's maybe not going to reach the banner year that we had in 2017, where we received over 50,000, mainly because of the Klansman filming. But it's really neat, and I actually just watched that movie for the first time. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's full of Ossining scenery, so particularly the Riverwalk. So watch it; it's really cool. We have the festivals coming up: the Portuguese Day, the Village Fair, and the Hispanic Celebration. I'm sorry I don't have the dates, but those are all in the month of June. Some of the things that the IT department is working on is, the main thing they're working on right now is the swap over of all the phone systems to LightPath. The main thing I want to point out about that, now that it's finished in the operations center and the manager's office, what we were paying Verizon in excess of $7,000 per month, we're now paying about $3,500 a month for the same service. Bill and Recreation send me some information. One of the small things, but it will be a long-lasting effect in his operating budget, as he switched to time clocks. And already, with the time clock implementation on his hourly employees, he already, compared to this time last year, spent $5,000 less because of the more defined accounting on those employees and when they're actually working. Some good news about the summer camps coming around this summer. He has 85% of his staff from last year returning, which is a really positive thing for him to work with, because he likes when he has the experienced counselors working there. It helps for a more efficient and better camping experience. Things like that have allowed him to offer 24 additional camping spots compared to last year. So there's 24 more campers in the same amount of programs. So that's a nice thing, particularly when you're on the waiting list. Some of the things that Tracy is spearheading out of planning, more specifically with her comprehensive plan, is she's working with the PACE Land Use Law Center. I think, as you know, they've been retained to help create the community engagement plan for the comprehensive plan, and that's something that she's going to continue to work on, and has also confirmed that their outreach is going to be done in English and Spanish. So I think she'll get a much better turnout and response based on that. Marilyn from Section 8 is going to be in front of you all starting in June with her PHA 5-year plan that she presented 5 years ago the last time. So she's going to be in front of you in June with a presentation to the board and the call for the public hearing shortly after that. And then in July is the public hearing, and then in September there's going to be a vote on her 5-year plan. But she is maintaining her 254 very low income family units out of her office, and doing a nice job doing so. The clerk's office, in addition to some of the FOIL software, which I'm not sure we've publicized yet, but I know they're using a FOIL software program that's helping expedite that program in conjunction with Stuart and the information he needs to review for those FOILs. They more recently just added another component to their internet-based customer service by allowing dog license renewals online now. So that's a nice little feature out of the clerk's office. I think that's it for the DPW/manager's report. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. A few different things, sort of a potpourri tonight. We did get a decision from the court in Westchester County earlier this week with regard to one of the two lawsuits brought against the village with regard to the initial adoption of ETPA back in September. The court dismissed the petition, which was brought by, this was the Audubon fee litigation. We're still waiting for a decision on the PJB equities. The court found that there was both a procedural defect with the petition, but also substantively there was no basis for the petition, that the study done by CCCE was appropriate and was consistent with the existing law in the state. So we're hopeful to get a similar decision with regard to PJB equities, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, from Justice Minahan, to whom that matter has been assigned. On tonight's agenda, there are a couple of resolutions I wanted to talk about briefly. One is the call for public hearing on proposed local law number 3. For those of you who follow, there is a proposed local law number 2, but we will be getting to that in a few weeks. But right now, this is local law number 3, which would amend Chapter 6 of our village code dealing with boards and commissions to add a new article relating to alternate members. That proposed local law is up on the Corporation Council page of the village's website. If anyone wishes to see it, that public hearing would be in 2 weeks. The idea of the alternates is to basically allow for the boards to operate at full strength. The alternates could count towards quorum. They could also deliberate when in fact they are needed. And it would be up to 2 alternates for each of our 4 land use boards. There is also tonight Resolution D, which is a call for a public hearing regarding the planned waterfront special permit by Ossining Land. That relates to the Hudson Step project, which is down on Broad Avenue, bordered by James and Hunter. This is just a call for the public hearing, which again would be scheduled and to be commenced on the 15th of May. This is a project which has previously been before this board. The approvals lapsed. It is now currently before the Planning Board, the Zoning Board, and will be considered by the Environmental Advisory Commission at its next meeting, which is Tuesday night coming up. And they will be there as well. Resolution E is to authorize the acting village manager to sign a lease agreement with the owner of 35 Washington Avenue. This is an individual who constructed some retaining walls and some steps onto the village right-of-way. We have had, there have been discussions that we've had with the board, and I've had discussions with the property owner, and this would allow the property owner to continue to keep the encroachments where he has put them, but providing to the village the right, obviously, to go onto its own property to make whatever repairs it has to make, which could potentially involve taking the encroachments down. And there will be a payment by the owner for the encroachments that he has done, but that will also be before the board tonight. And finally, at the very end, there is a resolution for the appointment of Karen Dettori as village manager, which will come before the board tonight. Just from a personal standpoint, I've worked with Karen on a number of matters during my nearly 2.5 years in this position. I look forward to welcoming her aboard when she starts in the middle of June. I'm very pleased about that. So I want a personal comment to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. Very busy time for the police department. For those of you on your way in who may have heard some of the sirens, I'll report on behalf of the fire chief since they're not here tonight. Right now, both the police and fire department are out at 172 North Howland Avenue, where there was a fire in the laundromat there. It doesn't appear to be anything major, but did cause quite a bit of commotion just as we were coming into the meeting. Our task program, formerly known as the GED, is up and running. We have 12 students who have been attending. And we're grateful for the support of the community. We've had people dropping off food and supplies and all kinds of things for those students. On behalf of the students, thank you. They're really grateful for all the support that they're receiving. It's not an easy thing to go back to school at any level, but particularly with this, it's a challenging course. We're going to continue to encourage anybody who still needs a high school equivalency diploma to attend. The program runs Mondays and Fridays at the Ossining Public Library in the teen room, though you do not need to be a teen to attend. It's simply the room that we're using. Mondays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Just show up. This past weekend, we conducted our annual drug take-back event. It was sponsored by the DEA. They have National Drug Take-Back Day, where we collected all kinds of prescription medications that people had in their homes. If you didn't have an opportunity to visit us on Saturday, the drug take-back bin is available in the lobby of our police station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we, in fact, see people come in at all hours of the day and overnight to drop off their medications. So we're glad that people are doing that. This week, we're conducting Operation No Empty Chair. It's sponsored by the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee and the DMV. It is a traffic enforcement detail, which is always needed in our community. This one in particular is going to be aimed at enforcing traffic regulations around our schools, specifically aimed at making sure that all of our students make it to prom and graduation. So each day has a different initiative. Follow us on social media. We'll let you know where the cars are operating and what you shouldn't be doing. But in general, drive safely, and you've been warned. About 10 years ago, we started an honor guard program in the police department, and that program was aimed at providing burial services for veterans who might not otherwise be entitled to those. As it so happens, over a lifetime, people sometimes lose paperwork, and in your final moments, if your family cannot find your DD 214 discharge papers, the military will not provide services. Today, our honor guard, an 8-person detail, was sent to Croton to aid in a former mayor who also was a veteran and was a Korean War veteran and had served as a lieutenant in the Army. So I just wanted to acknowledge their contribution, because those folks, in fact, come in and do that for free as a service to the community. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be participating in the Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run. That torch is carried across the country, but particularly through the Hudson Valley this week. So around 1:40, we should be receiving the torch on South Highland Avenue in the area of Charter Circle, and we will run with it up Route 9 to Croton. If you watch Instagram, you'll find that I'm not that fast, so be patient with us and give us time. There'll be some traffic, but we'll try and move through as quickly as we can. On May 9th, I'll be the celebrity referee in the finals of the Ossining Union Free School District kickball tournament. So if anybody's interested in coming out and watching some kickball, we'll be there. And last, I'd also like to comment on that last one that Stuart mentioned. I'm pleased to see that the village is going to be discussing appointing a permanent village manager. I think that that's a good thing for all of us. I, too, have a lot of experience working with Karen that has all been really positive, and I look forward to having her on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move into organization announcements. Is there anyone here who would like to make an organization announcement? Village board resolutions. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening? So we'll move into our board resolutions. Letter A, approval of minutes, April 17, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village Manager hereby approves the minutes of the April 17, 2019 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter B, approval of voucher detail, May 1st, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated May 1st, 2019, in the amount of $377,234.82. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter C, call for a public hearing, proposed local law 3, 2019, titled "The Local Law Amending Chapter 6, Boards and Commissions of the Village of Ossining Code, adding a new Article 2, alternate members." Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place at 7:30 p.m. on May 15, 2019, at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, or soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard to consider Proposed Local Law 3, 2019, titled "The Local Law Amending Chapter 6, Board of Commissions of the Village of Ossining Code," which local law proposes to add Article 2, alternate member. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter D, call for a public hearing application for planned waterfront special permit by Ossining Land LLC pursuant to Village Code Section 27-23. I and 270-53. 270-53. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place at 7:30 p.m. on May 15, 2019 at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard to consider the application by Ossining Land LLC for a planned waterfront special permit pursuant to Village Code Section 270-23I and 270-53. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Before we vote, Stuart and Paul is, and for the public, this is the Hudson Step, commonly known as the Hudson Step Development, down on State Street. There was a time when they had all of their approvals, but they have expired at this point, so they've had to resubmit their applications to the land use boards, and the piece of it that comes to us is the special permit. We recently went through this process with another development. It's the village board doesn't have usually a lot of approval process on these big developments unless it's in these districts where there's a special waterfront permit. Could you give us an update on where Hudson Step is in their permit application process with the other boards?
Happy to. Hudson Step will be presenting its plan to the EAC on Tuesday night, as it is west of Route 9, a while since they appeared before. It actually appeared before. Step will, the following day, the 14th, will be before the zoning board. They're asking for variances from the zoning board, one which relates to building height, the other which relates to parking, not in terms of number of spaces, but how the parking will be done. As you know, it's underground robotic parking that they're planning to put in, so they have to set up the parking not just tandem, but in other ways. Those were two variances that were previously granted by a prior zoning board of appeals. 2 weeks after that, which would be the 28th of May, they will be back before the planning board for consideration of both site plan and additional use approvals. So those are the processes where it is now. We're also trying to schedule a time where members of the Historic Preservation Commission will be able to go and visit the Smith Robinson House. Owner of the property is trying to make an arrangement for a mutually convenient time for that visit to take place. There will not be another HPC review, but the HPC members have indicated a desire to see the place, and the owner has indicated that that happened. So that's where we are right now with all the land use. I've been working with Paul, also with Joe Cermelli, and with Tracy in terms of the particular items that were previously agreed to by the developer earlier iteration, or that those items then get carried through here, and whether there need to be any changes with regard to that. So there are a number of approval processes that have to continue. And again, as I said, it's all four land use boards plus this board will be involved.
Stuart?
Yes.
At the last meeting where their project consultant and or their counsel, I forgot what her role was, when she was giving us an update. Counsel, okay, thank you. She said that the following day they were going to be getting or applying for their demolition permit.
I am, Trustee Herrera, I am unaware, at least as of right now, if that was done.
Okay.
I will check. It's possible because it wouldn't cross my desk, but I haven't heard from the building department that an application was in fact filed, but
Okay.
I will find that out.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or comments about this? I guess my other question would be, it sounds like it's very early in the the application and approval process. Is there any reason why it has to come to us this early in the process?
Well, actually, under the code, it's supposed to come to you when they file for their site plan approval. So, and which they've done. And their site plan application is complete. So
okay.
It goes in the same way. There is a positive recommendation from the planning board to this board. Grant the permit. But again, you have, as we had before, once the hearing here is closed, you have 62 days to render a determination. It's not that 62 days from today. So it's just a matter of holding the hearing. But according to the code, basically it's pretty much to work in tandem with what the planning board is doing.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Madam Clerk? Does anybody else have any more comments or questions? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Letter E. Resolution authorizing the acting village manager to sign a lease agreement with Manuel Mayancela, the owner of 35 Washington Avenue. Whereas Manuel Mayancela, owner, is the owner of property of the Village of Ossining, having a street address 35 Washington Avenue and the tax map designation as 97.11-2-61 property, adjacent to which is a portion of the right-of-way owned and held for the benefit of the public by the Village of Ossining, the licensed premises. And whereas Manuel Mayancela performed certain work within the licensed premises consisting of retaining walls, stairs leading to a brick wall, and a stone apron in front of the asphalt driveway, which work was performed by Manuel Mayancela without the knowledge or consent of the village. And whereas the village learned of the work performed by the licensed premises while conducting a scheduled inspection of the property, and whereas the owner seeks to enter into a license agreement with the Village of Ossining to use and maintain the licensed premises, acknowledging the village's ownership of the licensed premises and the village's right to enter the licensed premises. Now therefore be it resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the acting village manager is authorized to sign a license agreement with Manuel Mayancela, the owner of 35 Washington Avenue. Do I have a motion?
Second.
On the board?
I thought there was gonna be an amount. Is that not in here?
I have a quick question, Stuart, as well. So, this agreement is going to stay within the property, not just with the property itself. Okay.
All right, it'll run with the property.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstained?
Letter F, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018, Budget Modification for Tax Certiorari Claims. Resolved, the 2018 General Fund budget is modified to eliminate the amount to be borrowed by tax certiorari claims, $100,000, as follows. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter G, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018 for refunded bonds transactions. Resolved, the 2018 General and Water Fund budgets are modified to adjust 2018 debt service appropriations due to refunding bond transactions in 2018, and to transfer the 2018 net savings of $40,424 to the debt service fund for future debt service use as follows. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
I wanted to ask Tom, all the numbers, is that the same information that we talked about last week in our work session?
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter H, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018 Budget Modifications for Installment Purchase Loans Appropriation. Resolved, the 2018 General Fund budget is modified to transfer $105,001 unexpended appropriations for LED street lighting installment purchase loan to the Debt Service Fund for payment to the contractor when the LED street light project is substantially complete, as follows. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor? Opposed? Letter I, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018 Budget Transfers Between Appropriation Accounts. Resolved, the 2018 General Fund budget is modified to transfer monies between various appropriation accounts and to appropriate excess revenues received for unanticipated expenditures during the year as summarized by the village treasurer. And be it further resolved, village departmental heads are authorized to balance their departmental budgets within object item categories, example, within 100 personal services accounts, or within 400 to 500 contractual accounts, or between object item categories, example, between 100 personal services accounts, 200 equipment accounts, and or 400, 500 contractual accounts, subject to approval of the village treasurer or village manager as follows. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter J, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018 Budget Modifications for Water Fund. Resolved, the 2018 Water Fund budgets is modified to transfer excess available appropriations as follows. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter K, Finance Budget Modification, FYE 2018 Budget Modifications for Section 8 Housing Program Fund. Resolved, The 2018 Section 8 Housing Program Fund budget is modified to appropriate excess HUD revenues received aggregating $22,531 and to adjust other revenue and appropriation accounts as follows. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter L, Finance Budget Modification, Water Demand Management Plan, Capital Project 2018. Whereas the Board of Trustees has heretofore authorized the village to participate in the Water Demand Management Plan in an amount not to exceed $279,085 and financed with grant revenues from the New York City NYC Department of Environmental Protection. And whereas the village has received $56,000 from NYC Department of Environmental Protection to date, for which program expenditures now therefore be it resolved, the budget for the Water Demand Management Plan capital project is established at this time for an authorized budget in the amount of $56,000 as of December 31st, 2018 as follows. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Continuing business of the board.
The one thing that I will mention, because I was writing a list as I was listening tonight, and Trustee Bazemore and I are serving on the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, and we're just recently looking through the list of folks who have already raised their hand and said they're interested in at some point being part of that process, and we want to encourage more folks to go to the village website. Right on the homepage, there's an icon that says comp plan, comprehensive plan. Just click right on there and get some more information about it. And if you think you might be interested in participating in that, either on the steering committee, on a subcommittee, which will be figured out as the year goes on, or you just want to make sure that you're kept in the loop about how that process is going, please do sign up there. But then also, it sounds like when when local law 3, assuming that goes through, we're going to have more folks that we're going to need for applying for the land use boards. We'll have 2 more positions on the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, the EAC, and the HPC. And I understand that the Land Tenant Relations Council also has a couple of openings. So now is a great time to go to the village website. And for all of those other standing boards and committees beyond the comprehensive plan, all of the standing committees, there's an icon. No, we don't have that icon anymore. How can people sign up? What does it look when they go to the village website? What should they
We're
look for?
in the process of creating a new form. It should be up by the beginning of next week. It's with iCompass, not
Oh,
with
okay.
the website. So it's a
So
little
people
bit
should just-
different,
Okay.
and the reporting will be different. much
Okay, so
better.
we'll do a big push next week after the new iCompass form is up, and people can right now start thinking about how excited they are to be able to apply when the new form is up.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else with continuing business? Madam Clerk?
New business of the board.
We do.
Okay. Appointment of Karen DeTroy, Village Manager. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby authorizes the mayor, with the approval of the Board of Trustees, to execute an employment agreement with Karen DeTroy at an initial base salary of $170,000 per year, said contract being subject to review by Corporation Counsel. And be it further resolved that Karen DeTroy is hereby appointed Village Manager of the Village of Ossining effective June 10th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? I'm sure someone wants to comment. No?
I'll go first as usual.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. So, first, let me just say that that I'm going to be highlighting the entire village manager departure, interim village manager appointment to now, so the whole timeline. So, the 3 individuals involved in this scenario, this is not anything personal. So, as I had said with my my colleague, Mr. Bazemore, who will speak for himself later, had stated that I've been pretty troubled by the entire process of the departure and how that was handled. I wasn't part of the discussion about the appointment of interim village manager Paul Frioli, even though it's not a reflection of my my thoughts or his experience. And the statement that was portrayed to be from the entire board, even though it wasn't from the entire board. So I've had to, do a big public clarification that despite what the mayor or two people are saying, that they're not speaking for me and my colleagues. So, and it didn't happen once, didn't happen twice, didn't happen 3 times. It actually continues to happen. And despite the political climate, we are all still colleagues, and we need to make sure that internally, when it comes to village operations, that we are charged to bring about that, despite the majority, whether last year it was myself, Quantel, and Deputy Mayor Codman, and this year it's Victoria, Rika, and Manny, that does not mean that that the initial conversations in the development of whatever sausage is being made, as you call it, is not done together. There's a difference from being given something to react to actually working on it and developing it together as a team, despite our differences, because at the end of the day, we are still charged, as trustees and as one body. So if you want to learn more about my position and my statement about the departure of our village manager, that is available. It's in the minutes that we just approved, so it's in the website, or you can just contact me. As far as the appointment of our interim manager, as I mentioned at our last meeting, which is why I voted no. It was not anything personal, but I did not believe, not being part of the process was the first thing. B, being told that I was okay with the process that I was never part of was an issue. That's B. And C, as I explained last week during the appointment, whether it's interim or not, I do not believe that any full-time individual can do 3 full-time jobs, especially, me knowing all that is on this particular individual's case, including the IMA with the town, other capital projects, being, a department head, and also being the executive officer, whether it's a week, a month. I also don't think it's conscionable for me to look to a taxpayer and explain to them that I think it's a good use of a professional's time and of taxpayer money to go to a person, because no person could do that much, no matter how great you are. And that's all due respect to you, Paul. And as far as tonight goes, I said that from the very get-go that I believed in an open, competitive bid process for the executive officer of our village. And that was even before we had the great candidate that we have tonight. But I said that because it's a public role, and my personal philosophical view of equal opportunity employer, and of access, that I wasn't going to support any process. This was even before we had a great candidate before us, unless it was publicly made available through a competitive process. So I have to be consistent with my past 2 actions. The disappointment and us acting like the private sector, even though we're the public sector when it comes to hiring employees. The process, that was still pretty troubling, but unfortunately I can't really go into details because it is deemed a personnel matter. The manager's departure, the interim manager's appointment, and the process to appoint any person this way through closed doors, even though we're allowed, just because we're allowed to or it's legal does not make it right. I had to be consistent and, not support the process, and also educate the public on really how we're operating as a board. And I don't feel confident that just because we're deemed or allowed by New York State or by law or by charter to do something, that we're going to do it in the most secretive, closed-door process way. I can't support that. Now, with that said, the majority of the board is okay with the internal secretive process. So when the appointment is done, I'm going to support the individual wholeheartedly because it's at the best interest of our village, and it's a person that's fully competent and very professional, and a person that I know personally and professionally. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows that this is not personal. This is about process. This is about addressing that internally as we're operating as a board. It has been a little rogue as far as operations and very reactive. Unfortunately, as a trustee, I've had to react to basically everything the past month. So I just want to be very clear. I said from the get-go that I would support a competitive process, at least a posting that was not supported by the majority of the board, which is their prerogative, and that's okay. But you know, every board in any capacity is going to have challenges working together. That's what makes a democracy, and that's why you have compromise and open discussions. But our constant challenge here is educating ourselves on what our role is, what our role isn't, where our role starts, where our role finishes. And currently, I'm not really confident to say that we're respecting or understanding any of those roles, whether it's in our manager, department heads, and especially electeds on this board. So with that said, I need to stay consistent, and I need to make sure that everyone knows my intentions. And if anyone has any questions, whether you're watching or you're in the audience or your staff in the village, and you really want to understand why I haven't supported the process from the beginning, please let me know. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment?
Okay. So, thank you, Trustee Herrera, for you pretty much nailed it on the head. I too, and this actually pains me because I actually know the person and have worked very closely with the person. But as stated earlier, I believe that it's important that if you want someone to do well, you have them come into an environment where it doesn't seem like people are giving jobs to their friends per se, right? So one of the things that we had stressed is that open the door if this is, if this is the best candidate that comes forward, that's great. At least give an idea that that you've actually went out there and saw it and looked for the best candidate. This is one of the most rushed jobs I've ever seen in village government. I haven't seen the quick turnover and turnaround that we're seeing today. I don't believe this was an open process. I think that the way in which the majority of the board has handled the contract, right, just giving the last contract and then just recycling it, there was no thought process into that, and it's unfortunate. I wish the board would have been a little more considerate about the candidate and the process and their fiscal responsibility, and their elected obligations to do what's best for the village. I too, listen, all it takes is 3 votes. I will definitely support the candidate and the manager. It's someone that I know that I've worked for, but I have to say that this should leave the public asking more questions than how it's being presented today.
Anybody else like to comment?
I'm not going to be try to on and to respond to comments that were done by my colleagues. I want to say thank you for Aaron to have us given us the opportunity to actually have manager. Very excited. I'm very happy to have her our next village manager. I know a lot of exciting things are going to be happening with her leadership. So I'm very, very excited about this venture that we are undertaking tonight. So I'm going to leave it as that. I'm looking forward to be working with her in June. So thank you so much to give us the opportunity and for the village to actually benefit of a lot of the things, positive stuff that you guys are going to be seeing from her. So thank you so much.
Good evening. I just want to say a few words here. I'm really excited about my support for Karen. I think that when I look at her qualifications in management, her history in this village of both being highly involved with Open Doors and the things that she's done there, Open Door, excuse me, and as well with IFCA. I think her understanding in management, her understanding of this village, her work with all our department heads. I do appreciate Karen having met with every single member of this board. I appreciate the time that she took to have conversations with every member of this board about her desire to sort of take the next big leap. And this is a big leap. I think that I had spoken about this going from a certain size organization to a large, although having done work with the UN, that's a pretty impressive organization right there. So I think that she's perfectly capable. There is great latitude given to boards like ours in how we choose. There is no definitive process for choosing and appointing a village manager. We have attempted to at times to promote from within. I would say that, Paul, when you were a village manager quite a while, we all looked to see whether you wanted that next jump or whether you didn't, and you didn't. And we're grateful that we were able to at least give somebody internally the opportunity to maybe move up. Village managers have been appointed through major national searches, which we did a couple of years ago, and sometimes they're basically are poached from competitor villages when somebody sees a really good candidate. So there's no definitive process. There isn't a timing. And Karen is at a place that I think makes the most sense now for this village. Her knowledge of housing and development, I think, will be of great value to our department heads, which she will manage. And I will say that having worked both in nonprofit organizations and for-profits where there are boards involved, I think the knowledge of how to navigate through boards is also a great asset. I will say, Karen, since you're sitting here, I think for me, and because both of us are not tall people, I can barely see you over there, but I will say that your reputation in this village is stellar. You have worked with every single member of this board, and so and many other department heads, and I think that's great. But for me, to be honest with you, your signature attributes that I think will lead to successful tenure in the village, however long that will last, is the following. I think your composition as having a really soft heart, really thick skin, great intelligence, and a character that is described by most as having deep integrity will suit you well in this job and in jobs well after this. And for me, as both a citizen, as a person who's seen you in action, and a person who has spoken to others about you, I am in 110% support of having you as our next village manager. I thank Paul for really everything that you have done for us, and that you have done it, I think, with also with integrity. We asked you first, and you always really step up, and I think that's great. So I'm in support, and I hope that I would have liked a majority vote. I am reading the tea leaves that we're not going to have that, but I don't know.
Unanimous. You would have liked unanimous.
I would have liked a unanimous. Excuse me. I'm being corrected. Excuse me.
I'm just saying we will have a majority.
We will have a majority vote based on conversations that we have had, and we've had conversations. I'm using the wrong language. Sorry about that. And that's it for me.
Karen, I'm so grateful that you are interested in this position, and I think that you are the right person in the right moment for our community. There are so many exciting things happening in Ossining. You're already a part of so many of them through your work as the executive director at IFCA. It's been wonderful working with you in that relationship, and I could not be happier about you coming on board here in the village. For folks who don't know Karen as well as those of us up here on this side of the room, not only is she a resident of the unincorporated town, and we very much like having people from the unincorporated town in our leadership positions, just like Stuart Kahan, and as well as longtime village resident. Chief Sylvester. It's great when we can have people from our own community leading our staff here in Ossining, and it's really special that we have somebody so eminently qualified to take on this position, who is an Ossining resident, has raised her family here, and has contributed so significantly to the community in a number of ways already. Karen is a bridge builder. Regardless of the vote that you see here tonight, you've heard everyone here talk about what an impressive person she is and how we are all so supportive of you when you come into this position, and are very excited for the success that you're going to have in helping take Ossining to the next level. I have gone through 2 lengthy, exhaustive searches for village managers and reviewed dozens of resumes, as have all of us. And I can tell you, I have never interviewed a candidate I have been so excited about, who is so eminently qualified to serve this village in the way that we are about to vote you to do for us. So thank you very much for raising your hand, and I look forward to June 10th. Not that we won't be speaking 100 times before then. Alrighty.
I just have one more comment
Thank you.
to Trustee Levin's point. I don't think you could sincerely have hoped for a unanimous decision, seeing how me and Trustee Herrera raised the concerns and they were overlooked. There were concerns raised today. Again, you guys rushed the process so much that at some point, Karen, we're going to have to understand the kind of outside consultant that you want to do, right? Like that was a question raised, and for you people to continue to move with the process and then say, hey, I was hoping for a unanimous decision, that's problematic. I mean, this is really a botched system that we have here. So if you were sincere about that, you would have at least taken into consideration the concerns that a few trustees have risen.
I think we're going to have to continue this conversation after the vote, because I'm not even sure exactly what's being said.
Yeah, because I thought matters of personnel are actually, since we haven't voted yet. But I'm not going to respond anyway, so.
Well, just I mean, regardless of whether we discuss it or not, I think he was, and Q, please correct me if I'm wrong. You asked a particular question regarding a particular matter that would have aided you in the appointment of an individual or appointment. You did not receive the acknowledgement or answer that you thought was appropriate, so that troubles you because you're not really prepared to take a vote. Okay.
Well, I can vote.
Well, yeah, but
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
No.
Nay.
We'll move into visitor recognition. Anyone here to address the board on anything?
Welcome.
Just need your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Verisco, and I live at 46 Iroquois Road in the village of Ossining.
Welcome.
Good evening.
My reason for being here today is very simple, and it's been addressed in past meetings, and I guess today is not on the agenda. I'm here to ask you all to please put Ossining's children first. I am here today to talk about the Hudson Link House that's set to open, I think, any day now. I haven't been able to get sufficient information from you, Mayor Garrity. I've left a few messages. I'm not sure if you're aware. I was asked to come to your office yesterday, and then I was told you weren't there. It's a little troubling to me as a parent. So I'm here to address some of my concerns and to ask you to please make this a priority, because our kids matter. I learned about this halfway house on the news. That's not the way I wanted to learn about it. But once I did, I kept listening and I kept looking for an answer from my local government, because I thought, how could my local government just let this blow over? I thought there would be so many roadblocks put in the way by my local government that this could not possibly go through. There are so many families that utilize that fantastic facility, Park School. I recently had the opportunity to meet with a number of the administrators there. I've done a tour. I've met the teachers. They're fantastic. That school is a huge asset to our community. There's families that are moving specifically to Ossining because of it. There is a massive wait list this year. I don't know if everyone here is aware. Not everyone's getting in, but they want to. They're knocking down the doors. So my concerns are that there is a house with formerly incarcerated individuals that is about to open across the street from this great school. And I'm an attorney, actually. So I kind of see both sides of this, and in my earlier career, I did some criminal work. I understand that there are so many difficulties faced by people who are no longer incarcerated when they re-enter the community. And if there was any other location for this house, I would be in support of it, but I cannot support it across the street from 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. There's a lot of families that cannot come down here right now because they're putting their kids to bed and they're waking up tomorrow and they're sending them to that school. And a lot of them don't even know this is going on, which I really hate to be the bearer of bad news and telling them all this. And I feel like I'm actually losing friends telling them that maybe their kids aren't in the best situation in a few days. So I am begging you to please do whatever you can to influence and to take a legal action. I know that there are legal actions that can be taken to prevent this from happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frisco.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.
I have a feeling some other folks may want to speak on this topic, so we can address any concerns. But regarding Ms. Frisco, I did get your message, and I did call you back, but it was this afternoon. My office hours are 10 a.m. to 12 noon, so if you came after that, then perhaps I wasn't there, but we can certainly speak offline.
Nicola Kenny, 11 Edward Street. I live 1 block away from that halfway house. Yeah. And I have had a very difficult time getting any information about this process that was followed, if there was any process, before this initiative was started, this project was started. And the first time I actually heard about any concerns about it was at the meeting 6 weeks ago, where there was another speaker, and apparently someone who lived like within a house or two of the property in question here. So, there are a lot of children, a lot of, older kids, and even adults who are not at all interested in this place. Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Hi, David Mallon from Washington Avenue in Ossining. I've spoken about this before, this same house. And the reason I'm coming back is because there continues to be a lot of non-information, but also misinformation about the house. And unfortunately, some of it seems to come from village officials, whether intentionally or not. I appreciate the desire to find out more about this information. 2 weeks ago, we heard from several of you, and we certainly heard from Corporation Counsel, Mr. Kahan, that the supervision of the individuals in the house would come in the form of parole visits from parole officers. And if I'm stating it incorrectly, I'm sure you'll correct me on that. This is the first time we heard that. 2 weeks earlier than that, it was made clear that we don't know exactly how this house is going to be run or supervised. What's clear to us is the information provided to Mr. Kahan is not the information that was provided to the parents. And we don't believe it was the information provided to New York State. How do we know that? We know that New York State has very strict rules prohibiting fraternizing among parolees. So if the house were to be run the way that Mr. Kahan said, it raises a lot of questions. And we don't understand the role of New York State in this. We don't understand the role of Ossining in this. And a lot of questions still have to be answered about this. We think that the game that's being played here is, if services are being provided in the house, as they have to be under New York State rules, clearly it can't be a single-family residence. To say that it's a single-family residence and exploit that loophole, they have to tell one story to New York State, one story to the parents, and one story to the village. That's why this conversation should have been taking place a long time ago with the community in a transparent way, not just closed door meetings and pronouncements from this body after these 3 minutes are up. There's been misinformation about Hudson Lake itself. The 2% recidivism rate is a very misleading statistic. Is that a statistic for Ossining? No. Is it a statistic for housing? No. We know that when former inmates live together, recidivism goes up by a large amount. That's why there's such strict rules from the Department of Corrections. So there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. We appreciate Trustee Herrera's attempt to get this conversation going, but we understand that Hudson Lake's director only wants to talk to the community after the house is open. Having misled the community for over a year, and the former village manager knew about it, and the mayor knew about this plans for this house long before the public did, long before the schools did, that's not sufficient. So we appreciate that you want to champion Hudson Lake's mission. They have a great story to tell. But the fact that they can't be honest with the community is another story. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if this house is run by Mother Teresa or Charles Manson. If the village has no role, it would be fine. The village has to have a role, and it's got to be a positive role, not the role that it's been playing. Please represent the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon.
Thank you.
Kate Rothschild, South Highland. Can't speak as passionately as either one of these individuals. I am representing a number of parents that have asked me to speak. As someone said, they're tucking their kids into bed. I have 5 children. They've all been through the public school system here. I just recently found out about this, only the last 2 weeks ago. I heard about this. And I'm shocked that it's not on the agenda. There is no transparency. There's no introduction. I could see, I believe in rehabilitation and second chances. I get that. But to have a house like that between Park School and then Nelson Park, where you have a basketball court, tennis courts, a ball field, and people walking their dogs around, to me, it is not the location. It's definitely not the location. And to not have any information whatsoever. No one knows about this. Very, very few people. I'm sure if I stood on the sidewalk when parents came out of Park School with their kids and I asked them, are you aware of this? I can guarantee you at least 80% of them, at least, would say, we're shocked. We know nothing of this. So I ask you to reconsider this. This is an awful location, and it was not, no one was given a chance to even respond to this at all, except now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rothschild. Would others like to speak?
Jessica Salo, Broadway, and I'm also in opposition of this house. I spoke at the January meeting, and you told me that it was in the code. So we look at the code, which says defining a single family as 5 unrelated individuals. So we bring it up at another meeting. And I'm sorry, council, but you came to us and then that it's dangerous in order to define what a single family is any farther than that. And if you look to other communities in this county, specifically Bedford, because they also have a maximum security correctional facility in their district, their family code of what their definition of what a single family is 4 individuals. Why does it need to be 5? Ossining already has an issue with overcrowding, which puts our volunteer fire department at risk. Redefining what a single family is not dangerous. And I think it's actually required in order to get Ossining further beyond and into a better place than what it's currently at. And so I take issue with that. And also, I take strong issue with what you said at the last meeting, where it's a convenience for the state parole board that they only have to go to 1 residence. It is not a convenience for the members of this community to sacrifice safety and security in order to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Ms. Salo.
Good evening. My name is Rosemary Almodovar, and I reside at 14 Washington Avenue. And I'd like it if I'm not done right in the 3 minutes, if I can just finish. I'm here tonight to once again voice my concern regarding the halfway house, transitional home, or house plan to give to transitional housing to formerly incarcerated maximum security inmates, whatever you want to call it. It's a halfway house, and it's set to open soon. As I've stated in the previous Board of Trustee meetings, I have met with Hudson Link on 2 separate occasions to ask questions regarding the home and the purpose in which it would be used. The fact that Hudson Link decided to open a halfway house in a residential neighborhood right across from Park School and between Nelson Park and Nelson Sitting Park without any input from this community, and has done it in such secrecy, has been a red flag since it was found out. It shows the complete disregard Hudson Link has for this community. The fact that this home will be unsupervised, except for occasional visits from parole or probation officers. Hudson Link has never operated a housing facility of this kind and has no statistics to back it. It's just irresponsible. There will be a revolving door of formerly incarcerated maximum security inmates, of which persons residing in the home will be unknown until they're placed there. Fact is, the formerly incarcerated that will be placed in this home have committed horrific crimes and are seeking redemption. Second chances can be given by why launch a first-time ever home like this in a residential area and not be transparent with this community? Why are we supposed to welcome with open arms the same individuals whose own families and friends won't even open their doors? Fact is, the history of halfway houses and recidivism rates are alarming. And to allow such a home to open in a residential area and for our village not to step in on behalf of the residents who live here simply because of a technicality in our current zoning law is not fair. If we truly call this home what it is, it would not be allowed to open in a residential area such as this, because Hudson Link would be required to go through a certain process in order to be able to get approved. Hudson Link has lied directly to me, as well as to this board, saying there would be supervision when there clearly is not. I ask you this question. When this Board of Trustees met with Hudson Link, what questions were asked? Who asked them? And was every concern of this community covered? I can say for certainty it was not, because none of us were included. I have children, and their safety comes first. I have friends and family in this community, and their safety comes first. I have neighbors in this community, and their safety comes first. So I'm going to ask you the same. Who comes first for this board? Are children, residents, taxpayers, or a non-for-profit that has their own personal agenda? Thank you.
Would others like to comment? Welcome.
Hello. So I have recently moved from Ossining to the village of Croton, 1 mile north. But prior to that, I was a 27-year resident of the village of Ossining, and I also sat on the village board for 2 terms. And I certainly feel your pain in hiring the correct village manager. I went through several iterations of that. In fact, the first week that I served as a village trustee, it was a big kerfuffle and our village manager was fired. And I know that there are many different ways to go about finding a person to fill that role. Certainly in my experience on the village board, and then later as town supervisor observing the village board, I saw every one of the things that have been said here done as a strategy. But I also think that you have had the great good fortune of finding a candidate in your community that knows the community, that has worked for this community for as long as I've known her, which, as it turns out, is 26 years. And you've done a really, really, really smart, good thing for the village of Ossining in appointing Karen DeTore as your new village manager, and I congratulate you. And I know that all of you, regardless of what happened, the vote that you chose to take tonight will work together in partnership with her, because I know all of you have the best interest of the village of Ossining at heart. So congratulations and good luck to all concerned.
Thank you, Ms. Borja.
Good evening, Village Board, Mayor. My name is Dana Levenberg, and I live at 18M Walton Place. I'm also the supervisor of the town of Ossining, and I've had the pleasure of working with Karen DeTore on the board for the last, 3.5+ years. And she's been an excellent council member, but I've also seen her transform an organization, and I've watched as she transformed IFCA. And I think that she has just taken the organization that she leads to the next level. And I'm so excited about all the work that she's done proactively from her perspective, from the work that she's done in IFCA with the village. And I think that she's absolutely in a perfect position right now. And as Legislator Borgia mentioned just before you, I know that you've all had an opportunity to work very closely with her. She has personally supported at least 2 of the members of this board who, in their lives and in their successes and where you sit today, who just voted against her. I am disappointed that you chose to vote that way, but nevertheless, I'm extremely pleased that you have that the majority of you have chosen to support her her as your next village manager. Again, as Ms. Borges mentioned, there are many ways that you can find the best person for the task. And sometimes when there's a person in your midst who you see is that person, then you take the opportunity and you run with it. So congratulations, and I wish you all success in moving our village forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak this evening? All right.
Must be the only one that's.
Omar Lopez. I live at 4 Glen Street in Ossining. I want also a candidate for Ossining Village Trustee. I want to also pile on the support for Karen. What I have seen in my experience in recruitment, I've worked in recruitment actually for the last 4.5 years. And it is true that there's a lot of benefit in having a really detailed process, particularly to eliminate bias, to find the best person for their job. It's really important to have a process. At the same time, you all have experienced many different ways of trying to find the right person. And while it is true that there could be the proverbial unicorn out there somewhere in Idaho or California or upstate New York or somewhere else, what you have found in your process is that really what we're looking for is someone that knows Ossining, that can get the skills, not only that they need to do the work, but also to get the buy-in of all the folks involved, and that is somebody that can build bridges. And in my short time here in this community, I've had a lot of opportunity to meet people. Karen is one of the warmest people that I have met. She has had the grace of explaining to me the ways that she has worked in the community personally, and I've really been impressed by it. So as someone with the urge to serve the community, to see someone that has done it for so long and so gracefully, congratulations to you and to her for making a great choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Lopez? All right. No, you don't have to set a clock for her.
Karen DeTore, 5 Noah Drive, the unincorporated town of Ossining. I just want to say thank you. I am very grateful for the opportunity to serve the community on behalf of the village as village manager. I have worked with you all and successfully, and I am very confident that we will work together successfully for the future of Ossining. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. No timer necessary for that one. All right. Okay.
Looks like somebody wants to say things.
Yes. Oh,
Some other comments about Washington, which I would.
you're
rather-
right.
And
yes.
same here.
Yes, thank you. There were some questions about process that maybe Corporation Council might want to.
Can I actually just go first if you don't mind, just because you may be able to add on or clarify.
Please.
So thank you we have actually quite a few parents here tonight. Again, thank you so much for being here. This has been a pretty long process and progress as far as the house goes. As I said, from the very get-go, one thing that we all learned, and I learned, regardless of your feelings on the property, the location, the house, the function of the nonprofit, is that there was never, till this very day, communication as a whole to this board, to the parents, to the community. That there hasn't even been a meeting. So what I just did, I was like, you know what? Let's, clearly we have a communication problem or understanding problem. So why don't we just get all the stakeholders in the room? I mean, that's what I've done, what I've been taught. That's a best practice. Till this, I didn't realize how hard that was going to be. Mr. Pika, which by the way, I know personally through the nonprofit and through the great work that they do, but that is not irrelevant then right now, did agree to meet with myself and all the residents of Washington Avenue at a public meeting at Village Hall. He said in an email that is public that he would prefer if we did it after the house was open. And I followed up with an email dated April 22nd regarding how to update parents or constituents or myself or the board as to what's next, and I haven't received an email back. I also heard that the superintendent of schools, had a meeting with the mayor and Mr. Pika, and he does not, as of right now, plan on doing any further communication on the matter. However, I understand why not just parents, but why the community just wants to know what transpired at that meeting. Since I just heard that it went well, and you heard too, but I understand why you want to know more. So this entire thing has really been about lack of communication. And because of that, now you have people through all sectors of our community that just don't trust what's going on the property and just don't trust the nonprofit just because of how the process has gone for a year. So I am hopeful that at least the first and only public stakeholder meeting for those affected or concerned or impacted by this new pilot program, because it is a pilot program that is aimed to do well, can actually have a conversation with everyone in the room. I offered to even have a mediator there. That way it's not coming from the board or the parents or Mr. Pika, but haven't been too successful yet. I'm happy that I got an okay for the meeting request, but I'm sorry to say that I don't have a date for you. My next step when I spoke to Mr. Mallon was that we were going to have a couple of dates, and that we were going to do outreach to make sure that the majority of residents on that street and then parents could attend the meeting at Village Hall. That's all that I have for now. But I kind of, I'm with you. I don't really understand why it wasn't done in the first place. I also understand your frustration with the communication from the village versus the entity. So we had given you more information than the actual entity has to the public. So you would think that we were spokespersons at times, even though we're not. So I understand why that would confuse you as well. So my door, email, phone is open. I will let you know. I'll follow up tomorrow as far as actually having 1 or 2 dates for a meeting. But that's kind of all the updates that I have. I was waiting to hear back from Senator Carlucci's office, and I'm kind of waiting to hear back from them as well. I'm trying to see really how we can set up an agenda for a meeting that will really give people the information, will educate the people on the pilot program, and will give a respectful dialogue as to asking questions and receiving answers, which I know is a lot to ask, but that's what I've been up to as far as the process, and I'll keep on pushing for a public meeting. Just to let you know, this body, well, at least me, has not received an actual explanation of the pilot program. I saw a great promo video on LinkedIn, but I don't, I can't really answer the questions that you have, regardless of whether it's our role or not to approve it or sanction it or not. It's more of a community relations fail that has to be fixed, because currently at least the residents and a lot of parents just don't trust it. And when someone doesn't trust the process or a person or an entity, that can be troubling and can only, it can only further, issues. So, thank you.
So I've actually generally haven't spoken about this issue I want to say that I definitely understand the concerns that community members have. Even talking to a few of my own friends, um, they were kind of shocked on my position that I take with respects to Hudson Link and getting the house. I want to be very clear. There's something that a corporation counsel has continued to share over and over and over again, and that is what the definition of a family is. It is very important that the definition of a family remains to be 5 unrelated persons. It's also very important to understand that we don't necessarily get to decide who lives in our community. And when we began to try to find ways of who's moving in and who's moving out, or trying to find ways to create committees of who's moving in and who's moving out, that is to me, that is very dangerous. It resonates historically with me. So I want us to be very careful, right? There are 2 things that all of us, we swear by. We swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, and the New York State Constitution. That is what we're beholding by. That is the oath that we all have taken, and that is the one that I will continue in the best of my ability to make sure that I uplift and do what I have to do in my necessary power. And I also want to just say, a lot of the concerns that people are having with respect to who is living in proximity to the school, unincarcerated people have been living in that neighborhood for years. They've lived behind the school. They live across the street from the school. You just didn't know. Some of the concerns that you continue to have, I promise you, they've lived in Claremont Gardens. They were there. You just didn't know. And that's just the nature of Ossining. If we know anything about our criminal justice system, we know that, unfortunately, our criminal justice system particularly targets certain individuals, that being of poor, Black, or brown communities, and sometimes the crimes that are the most heinous, particularly financially, are basically a slap on the wrist. So please understand, I understand your concerns, but as one who grew up down the street from here, they've always been there. And constantly calling it halfway house, you can continue to do so, but it is grossly inaccurate. It really is. So that's my piece on particularly the Hudson Link. Anybody can buy a house here in Ossining. Whether you're not for profit LLC, you can buy a house. And you cannot sit up here and say, hey, any person who buys a house, I want to know who's going in my community. That's not right. And that's unconstitutional. And I think that's something that our corporation counsel has alluded to. So any chance of changing a definition from a 4 to a 5, or saying that people have to be related, it may happen. It won't. I'll vote against it while I'm here on this board. I wouldn't vote for it. So that's all I have to say.
I'm sorry. I wholeheartedly, and you and I have sat together looking at different housing issues. I would just put an exclamation point on what you just said, which is, you keep saying that they've lived here for a long time. They've lived here for a long time. They've lived where I grew up in Long Island for a long time. They lived in Brooklyn, where I lived, for a long time, and it doesn't make them any more guilty or innocent of anything they did afterwards. I think your point is they've been living here for a long time, and they've been living peacefully like everybody else has. That's the exclamation point. I don't know what my neighbors did before they bought the house next to me. I do think in this community, many people will be harmed if we change the law about the 5 or the 4 or the 3. It's a slippery slope on different levels of the families that would be affected by that. So I'm going to put an exclamation point on what Quintel just said and underscore lots of his commentary, and I appreciate it.
You don't have to, just makes me.
Quick question for you, Stuart. I don't recall. Just trying to look these up, but we have a number of people or a family member. For some reason, I don't think we do.
That is reflective of the parameters of that particular property, size of the bedrooms.
Right.
No, no,
The
that's-
reason the number 5 has come up is because of the number of bedrooms that are in
Bedrooms,
that
correct.
particular house.
So that could be
So
10
there's,
people.
there's not
Depending
a
on the
number.
number of
Yeah, it could
on-
be 10
yeah,
people.
it's no number for a family.
No,
member.
it's-
I mean, you can have a house. There's so many houses in Highland Avenue where there used to be single family houses and there are about 10 bedrooms.
Right.
So, and technically by building New York State Building Code or IBT, you know, it depends on the square footage and you can fit how many people that live in there. So there's no really a definition of how many people is a family.
Now, the key here is that they're not related by blood.
Correct.
You're right. The 5 here is used because, given the size of the house, that's the number
Correct.
of people that could legally live there.
So this not, I wouldn't want to change the definition because that, anyway, can agree with you, Quintel, on a lot of what you said. I actually, live around the corner, that property myself, been there for the past, that neighborhood, changed so much. Back when I was a kid, one of my oldest uncles used to sing a song. It was a song about Sing Sing, and I didn't know what Sing Sing. Actually, he explained to me because many years ago he actually lived in Tarrytown and worked. And he explained to me that there was prison. And anyway, going forward, when I had the opportunity to come of this country and be part of the village of Ossining, I understood that they welcomed me. Individual that I came from a different country. Just a lot of things that as a father, I understand the concerns of parents here, the people here, the people I've talked to, but it's explained by Stuart. There's not a lot of stuff the village board we do, and I had conversations with some of you, and I understand the frustration and some of the points are. I think part of it, what Omar had said, I agree with that as well with some of the statements that he mentioned, is part of the communication that was done by this particular entity. It happened last year, and it wasn't clear enough. Misinformation was given, and I think that's what I would like to see, given the opportunity to actually engage with him and try to get more clarification on what going forward with this. That's the part that I'm upset. Part of the not having, but again, there's not much we can do as a body itself. I know you may disagree with some of the stuff, but you know, again, this definitions and perception of a lot of the things that that group has bring us in dialogues that I had with different going to clarify some of the stuff. I'll definitely be part of the meeting if I can get to bring this group over. There's a lot of questions in there, obviously, so we'll look forward and I'll follow up with a lot of the stuff that I find. So.
Before I comment, Corporation Counsel, were you going to comment on particularly the process, because there are questions about that, or any elements of this situation?
Just a little bit on process and comments that were made tonight. Ms. Varisco, I have your request for documents, and I'm in the process of working on it because I've gotten similar requests over the past couple of weeks. I think it's important to remember here that this process was started with an application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for area variances. Zoning Board of Appeals considered it, There was notification to residents. I know there has been some issue with regard to that. The proof of that mailing has been provided, and it was mailed in accord with zoning code. At that hearing, where folks could have appeared, there was a presentation by Hudson Link. Questions were not asked what the house is going to be used for, and the reason for that is it's not something that's within the purview of the zoning board if a use variance is not being requested. Simply an area variance in terms of side yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks, if I remember correctly, because the house was simply going to be used as a single family home. As Trustee Bazemore has said, and as I noted the last time this came up before at a meeting here, this is not a halfway house. The state has specific definitions for halfway houses. This is not one. Some folks tonight have raised the issue, why didn't the village object? This is also not a home for disabled adults where an objection can be raised in accord with the Padavan law. And in fact, as most people on this board know, and probably on other municipalities know, when you raise those objections, you tend to lose when you raise those objections. But the simple fact of the matter is this is not something under the mental hygiene law where the village could come in and make an argument. This was an application by a property owner, and as Trustee Bazemore noted, a limited liability company can buy a house, an individual can buy a house, anybody can buy the house. They came in, they were using variances. In fact, they were using variances that had similarly been granted to the prior owner of that house. And they came in and they made that application. Indeed, I should point out that had those prior variances not expired, by the time that Hudson Link took ownership, they would have been able to proceed without ever having to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals because those prior variances would have been grandfathered in and they would not have had to come back. But since the time for those variances expired, they did come back. It was granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals after a full hearing. There is a resolution that is on the record if anyone wants to see it. With regard to what folks in the community have been told by Hudson Link, I honestly don't know. I'm not part of that. I can tell you, as I said at the last meeting, there will be no on-site supervision other than the Division of Parole coming on occasion, and there will be no services provided inside of the house. The 5 men who will be living in there will be cooking and cleaning and doing what they have to do, but there's not going to be any education provided in there. Most of the folks there will be looking for either bachelor or master's degrees, so they'll be doing their own studying, but it's not as if there's going to be anything separate done there. Some questions were asked or raised with regard to, why would the Department of Parole want to have all these people in one place? Because for the parole officer who checks out, it's simply easier to do that for that person. I do recognize that some wonder, well, that easier for the neighborhood, but I think it's important to harken back to what Trustee Bazemore said, which is that you don't necessarily know about your neighbor or who lives in that house. Here you're going to have a house with 5 folks. That's very true. They are formally released inmates. That's also true. They have come through a particular program. I think, if I can be blunt, because folks are raising the issue with regard to the park and the school that's nearby, it's not been said, but I'm assuming that there is some concern that you will have a registered sex offender who will be living in the house. That's simply not the case. I want to make that very clear. Because under the terms of anyone who is registered as a sex offender, they cannot live within 1,000 feet of the particular home, school, or park during the term of that they are in fact so registered. So those individuals will not be part of this anyway. But you are looking at other individuals who have in fact been released from state prison and are now under parole supervision. The process that the village has handled, and I specifically refer to the village's Zoning Board of Appeals, was consistent with the practice and procedure of that board. Notice was given, a hearing was held, a decision was reached, no appeal was ever taken from that decision. And the variances were granted, and I believe, with the exception of a few outstanding inspections, the house is close to having a certificate of occupancy issued, and then folks will be able to move in. I know that people come before this board, and some folks have asked, why is this not on the agenda tonight? The simple answer is, this is really not a function of the Board of Trustees, with all due respect to the folks who employ me. This is really a zoning matter. And the simple fact of the matter is that the Zoning Board of Appeals is a separate entity within this village and made its determination based upon the application that was presented to it. Again, I am, and Trustee Herrera made this point the last time, I am not here as the spokesperson for Hudson Link. Mr. Pica is certainly capable of doing that. I am here, though, to give you the information that I have received. My office has always been available to folks. Mr. Mallon, I've met with you on a couple of occasions and spoken with you, given you FOIL requests. I have another request actually for you in my office right now. And if anyone else in the audience has a question with regard to the process that we've handled from the village's end, you are more than welcome to get in touch with me either by phone or by email, and I'll be happy to chat. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to do my best not to repeat so much of what's been said. And Trustee Bazemore, glad you spoke tonight. You and I have spoken outside of this, and it was great to hear your words. They were right on target. Clearly, there's not, I'm getting a sense from the board that there's not any interest in changing our zoning code from the way it is structured right now. It allows for the five unrelated people to live in a home. But it, just so folks know, we changed the code now, it wouldn't have any impact on the house that already has its building permits and is moving forward. So it wouldn't actually be relevant to change our law now. It wouldn't retroactively this particular property. What struck me tonight that I just want to point out to people, because sometimes when you hear something reflected back to you, you'll hear it a little differently. More than one person talked about this particular location. Anywhere else in the village was suggested better, or this is just not the location for it. And I just want to point out, this is a village that's just over 3 square miles. We have 6 schools, a dozen parks, and kids walk from school to their home in every part of this village. And what it sounds like people, I don't think, are intending to say, but what they're suggesting is that a home with formerly incarcerated people should be segregated elsewhere in our community. And that's just not allowed. And I'm sure that's not what you mean. Think about it. But to say these people don't belong in this neighborhood, maybe someplace else, that's what's being suggested. And that's certainly not who we are in Ossining. And frankly, it's illegal. Corporation Counsel, thank you very much for your clarification, as always. Are we done with comments on this? Has everybody said their piece? All right. In that case, then, can we have a motion for move into executive session for matters of real property and personnel related to specific persons?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned to executive session. Please join us next week at Village Hall for our work session. This meeting is adjourned.